have you received any letters? Are people watching you? Is there anyone from Gibson Dunn in this audience right now? Which I say only half joking, actually.
Well, if there are anybody from Joel or Gibson Dunn or their PR firm, they're also welcome, because we actually believe in transparency, and we believe that everybody can have the same society. So there should also be space for corporations to speak out, I think.
Oh, of course.
But also for us, and they shouldn't sue us. And now you asked me if I had any concerns doing this film.
The second film.
The second film. I mean, it's a very good story, and we like to do good stories. And the free speech is written in our constitution, also in Sweden and in the US. And of course, we should. And if we don't use the free speech, what's the point of having it in the constitution? So I had no concerns in that sense. Just telling you that if you want to buy this film, the previous film, it's out here, $20.
10 copies.
Do you think, in Sweden, if the film was about a subject that touched a Swedish, if it would involve the Swedish corporation or the Swedish power structure, is the freedom of press so much different there than here? I mean, it's easy, I think, not easy, I think it's wonderful that Sweden showed that solidarity, but do you think there is this is not a loaded question, I'm really curious, do you think there's a fundamental difference in what's happened to our press and our commingling of corporate interests with the whole government structure in this country versus your country?
You have to test it, as always. You have to test the boundaries of your own country. There is a big difference. The use of litigation is not so easy in Sweden. So it would be hard for them to kind of sue us. You can't sue, you can't defame a corporation in Sweden. You can only defame the individual. So the lawsuit against us wouldn't be able, you couldn't do it in Sweden. But of course, the same techniques that the PR machine, making the messenger, the whistleblower look stupid. Of course, the same things that would work also in Sweden. So and that's why I think this film is as important in Sweden as in the US, because we have the same kind of system. Journalists are losing their job, and the PR industry is growing. So it's something that is totally ongoing all over the world right now. So it's still important.
One of the most important things you said in the film was during an interview you talked about, you weren't going to think about all the negative worst case scenarios, and knowing, I went through the same thing, and when you're being pounded over the head with that kind of financial might, it's hard to keep your head above it all. So I'm just curious, what was really the impact on you psychologically, on your family? How did you keep going and knowing, just that they could destroy you? Again, I faced a similar thing. There was one summer in the middle of my lawsuit, a summer evening where I sat around the table and my wife and I were like looking at our bank statements and writing out checks and feeling like, we could lose everything. And it's, you're getting punished for trying to do, documentary making isn't the most financially rewarding existence, and you think you're doing it for good reasons, and you feel like you're being punished. So I know it was very difficult for us. We stuck it out, and as did you. But I'm just curious what it was like for you and your family.
For me, I think the worst thing was, of course, that it was ongoing 24/7. Your brain was kind of on speed. In that it's hard to sleep, you wake up in the middle of the night, you think about solutions. It's kind of solutions. How do we move? And then constantly doing interviews. It's hard to run your business. We as a company, we lost $200,000 around, and we still haven't recouped it. So it's kind of, there's a total stress on all sides. But there is, of course, the main difference between me being Swedish and you being American, because you have all your assets here, and it's an American corporation attacking you. it would be much harder for them to get to me in Sweden. It would take much longer time. We should actually have introduced quite soon one of the stars in the film here, Mr. Lincoln Bandler. I think he should come up here.
Thank you.
This is a lawyer, and these are two filmmakers. You see the difference.
And you once worked for that firm, Gibson Dunn, did you not?
I not only worked for them, but the main lawyer responsible for the lawsuit recruited me to Gibson Dunn.
Yeah.
And that is the thing, the statement I made early in the movie, that I was shocked by the lawsuit, because when I worked with them, they were First Amendment defenders, but
Right.
they drank the Dole Kool-Aid, and that was it.
Right. And I know this is such a naive, simple question, but you know, the tactics that were applied to, I know me, and the tactics that were applied to Fredric, and the things that get done in the name of the legal system by these lawyers who all have incredible credentials, you know, how do they look at themselves in the mirror, some of these guys? I mean, you know, you go out to dinner with them in some other context, and they seem like just like anybody else, but the things that are done in the name of the law sometimes are quite shocking, and I literally wonder to myself, you know, are they just so deceived by a false story from the other side, or do they know what they're doing?
Well,
It's like that I just don't understand that mentality. And since you once worked for that firm, I'm just curious if you could comment on it.
Well, when I worked for them, they weren't like that. We were pretty strident First Amendment defenders when I worked for them. But one of the interesting things having you here is the case actually started with Dole subpoenaing the TV distributor, subpoenaing the film festival to try to get a copy of the film, to try to get his outtakes. Same thing that they were doing to you. So they actually started it that way. That's how I started on the case, was defending against those subpoenas before he even got sued. But in terms of how they can do these kind of things, I had to ask myself that question a number of times, because I was, frankly, I was shocked not only that they brought it, but during the course of the litigation, they made arguments that literally years before we had laughed at together, that has how absurd they were, and the declaration by these people, just things that they would have never done. Now, you know, $10 million a year in business will probably do that to you. I mean, Dole had hired Gibson to handle the defense of all those pesticide lawsuits. So they got to the point when, you know, they said jump, they said how high. I mean, I was pretty shocked by it, though, because to me, and the irony is, I had a documentary filmmaker client a few months back. He'd make a documentary about Islam and some things of this nature. And a very controversial article in the New York Times had come out about this film. And that client called me and said, "Oh, this article, we got to go after them." And I said, "We're done. Our conversation's over. I don't do that. I don't sue the media." I think you should be able to draw that line. I don't know how to do it.
Should we take questions?
Yeah, why not? Sure. How did you get paid?
By the insurance company.
What insurance company?
Chubb Insurance. Insured the film.
Oh, that's what you say in the film. You say
Insured
that
his
in the
film,
film.
yeah. Now,
Okay.
he had to pay his original deductible, so he lost some money there, and then, of course, lost money because he had to focus on this instead of making films. But fortunately, he was smart enough to have insurance, so that...
And that's why he can have his suit and I had no.
Right.
Again.
So yeah, the insurance company paid us, but certainly I think Gibson Dunn probably spent over $1 million litigating just what they litigated.
And then the PR people.
Yeah.
Right.
Who called every single journalist that interviewed me. That's a lot of money.
And just to give a little context, my film Cruise, which was about the Amazon lawsuit against Chevron, cost $1.2 million to make, but my lawsuit defending my footage cost $1.3 million.
And who came up with that?
And my insurance company actually originally resisted paying because they claimed that subpoena coverage is not covered by the in the fine print, you know. And so I just, you know, on that summer evening where I was writing out many different checks and thinking that we were going to be ruined, one of the checks I was writing out to was to a whole branch of lawyering that I didn't know exists, which is called the coverage lawyer. I was actually hiring another lawyer to go after Chubb, my insurance company, to make them pay for my claims, and luckily I prevailed on that. But I actually, anyway, so it's about his film, but I mean, it was just
No, it's about our film.
It was an amazing like year to have to go through. Yeah.
First, I want to thank both the filmmakers for doing the kinds of films you do and for fighting. I think, Joe, you lost in your case.
I did.
You do lose in your case, and Fredric has won. But I want to ask all three of you the same question, but I want to start with the lawyer. Astroturfing, which is lying, which in the film says it's illegal, but I'm part of it.
It's a Brit that says so, so it's different.
Yeah.
Different countries have different laws. So
It may, I mean, if,
Let me finish my
if someone's
question.
hired by a company to sort of put false messages out there in favor of the company, you might have some false advertising type claims that could be brought against that, but it's less than clear that that is illegal.
So the question to the two filmmakers, documentarians normally seek truth beneath all the spins and all the positions. When you have a tool like this available to corporate life, astroturfing, lying, how does that affect you both ethically and aesthetically in terms of your filmmaking? How do you talk back to that kind of tool as documentary filmmakers?
I mean, what we both of us have gone through is that somebody is spending a lot of money to make us look stupid and to make us look like we're not professional and that we're not honest. And that's extremely hard to fight back. That kind of, especially that kind of dirty, anonymous astroturfing or that kind of stuff. It's very hard to fight back. The only thing we can do is to keep being honest and keep telling our stories. I mean, I don't know. I mean, we can never be like them. I mean, we can never start to do the same shit. I think we have to be, and it's not a big problem because I mean, Joe's film is about that Chevron left a lot of shit in the jungle in Ecuador. My film is about what Dole left in Central America, and what they did is so obvious, but they managed to make the press and a lot of people to talk about mistakes that I did or that Joe did. It's about shifting the focus away from the real stories, and it's amazing that so many journalists are interested in sending out that story instead of going for the real important story. It's like it's more fun to tell, oh, a Swedish filmmaker was stupid or an American filmmaker did a mistake. That's a more interesting story than to tell the real story. I still find it very provoking. Well, that was my speech.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't pay attention to those comments, and even when it's not astroturfing, people write all sorts of crazy stuff, and I just do my work and continue. I actually was blessed in my case with tremendous support, and in fact, that was the question I wanted to ask you. I mean, were you frustrated? Did you, in the Crude case, I immediately, for some reason, touched a nerve with the film community, and Robert Redford, Norman Lear, a lot of big names. It's not like I went after them. It was just kind of this nice show of support from the American film community standing up for what was happening to me. Our cases differed also in the sense that I was not being sued for defamation or libel. I was being sued to get access to my footage and later my emails so that they could use my materials against the underlying plaintiffs of my case, and they did that quite successfully, although that narrative has now changed, and I think this whole thing is kind of blowing up in their face.
Explain that, please. Explain how the narrative is
It's
changing.
a long story. It's a long story with my
Okay.
case, but the tide is turning, and I think a lot of U.S. courts have had enough of these multiple subpoena actions in my case, because I wasn't the only one who was subpoenaed. Anyone who had any contact with the plaintiffs, but it's a very long story. But were you disappointed by the lack of support, from the filmmaking community? You know, I mean, you and I had two very different kind of reactions, and I don't know if that's because I was an American or whatever, but we had the same issues, and it was a different reaction.
I think it's a big difference. I mean, being a well-known American filmmaker and being a not so well-known Swedish filmmaker. Well-known in Sweden, but it's not here. So of course, and everybody in a society, even really people with big hearts, have to pick their fights. And of course, a Swedish filmmaker, and maybe he did something wrong, and the Dole story was so well constructed, the PR story. So actually a lot of people also within this business, because I contacted you after you were in a panel here in New York City, and you were asked a question about my film. And you said something, well, I could read in you said, I don't know if that film was balanced. So the story was kind of out there was something wrong with that Bananas film. So that made it really hard for me to...
But I did say I hadn't seen the film yet.
Exactly. No, I mean, it kind of works.
Right.
Yeah. And you were totally busy with your own. I mean, you had no energy and time to engage yourself in other filmmakers' work. I mean, I totally understand it. You know. So that they, in that way, that they were really successful in making me not be a part. But there were also some people in this country. The D Word is an internet community of documentary filmmakers who were really active for a while. So I also have supporters, but I didn't have time to organize my support in this country. I was totally 24/7 just trying to survive. You know, I mean, I don't have a big machine. But anyway.
Yes.
Really interesting film, and it's great to see you a lot less stressed now. I'm curious if you got headlines in Nicaragua, and if so, what they were.
We got headlines in Nicaragua, and they were, of course, extremely frustrated, the Nicaraguans, that Dole managed to turn this case around. And for them, it was quite easy to see the attack on me as an attack on the Nicaraguans.
The litigation has been going on for 30 years. I mean, this was chemicals that was used in the late 70s. They have been fighting this fight a very, very long time, and this was just another setback of many over decades.
What's the status of pesticides in Nicaragua and Dole now?
I mean, in the banana industry, they keep using pesticides. 1/3 of the production price of an ordinary banana is pesticides or chemicals. So if you buy conventional banana, you pay a lot of money to dog chemicals from other people. And it's not the same pesticide today, it's something else. But I would like to have my kids under that cloud of pesticides. So if you want to make a difference, you should go buy fair trade organic. That's what I would say. Yep.
I feel like I have to stick up for corporate America here, so
That's good.
Feel free to boo me.
No.
But, I'm an attorney, and I represented a company called Kraft Foods. And for those of you who don't know, Kraft makes Velveeta cheese. And there was a graphic artist guy who had an internet site. He called it King Velveeta's CheesyGraphics.com. And on his website, he had a bunch of soft porn, maybe some would say hardcore porn. And so we wound up suing him actually in federal court for tarnishment of Kraft's trademark. And while he could have said that he used it to parody or satire, actually he said that he just chose the name King Velveeta because it popped into his head, thereby sort of removing any First Amendment defense he had. We wound up getting a preliminary injunction against him. There was no PR machine. In the case, we had showed that since 1930, Kraft had advertised Velveeta as wholesome food, as digestible as milk itself. And so therefore, by using pornographic images in relation to the trademark,
What is your point here
Well,
in relation to this?
my point is that this graphic artist wound up making a documentary film about the case, and I think it's just unlike your situation. It was a situation where a corporation was taking action to protect its trademark without any claim of defamation, without any claim of, without any use of any PR machine. The filmmaker the graphic artist made a documentary film. I don't think it went anywhere. There was no lawsuit over the documentary. And it's just a totally different situation.
Yeah, but you know why? I mean, listen, we don't have so much time, so that's why I'm trying to cut in your cord a little bit. No, I believe that. I mean, that's why I call this film Big Boys Gone Bananas, because in our country we have a fairy tale hero called Pippi Longstocking, and she cannot believe that if you're really big and strong, you also have to be very, very kind. And I certainly believe that the powerful, the big corporations, the governments, whatever, they have to be very tolerant, and they have to be very kind. And sometimes they might be not so fairly criticized. I think that's a part of being big, to also to accept it and don't hunt down small people. I don't really get that point. I think if there is a stupid porno artist doing something, I think also craft can survive that. I know. And they just go on with their business. I don't agree, but that's a different debate. I think we can do it. We can continue afterwards. Sorry.
Fredric, I was wondering about the lingering effects of the Swedish food chain, Max, that dropped Dole products. Did they keep up that boycott? And how many other companies sort of followed their suit? Has anyone figured out what the impact, at least in Sweden, was against Dole's market share?
I have no numbers. I know that the sale of fair trade bananas more than doubled in the country after the debate, and it keeps going up a lot. And there's a lot of cities and other players that refuse to buy Dole products. So it has and Max don't sell any Dole fruit salad. And they've been in business for 40 years. They never had so much press ever.
Yeah, and at the time that this was going on, Dole was in the process of doing an initial public offering to become a public company. They'd been private for all their life, and they were becoming a public company, and it was having a massive effect on the IPO. And it was why one of the major reasons they withdrew the lawsuit was killing the IPO, because in Europe they were taking a very big hit.
We have time for one last question, guys.
Has anyone not asked a question before?
The film does a great job of telling a dramatic story of the film's eventual survival in the courts, in the United States courts. I wonder about the media and whether you made any attempts to fight the battle in the American media, and what happened to that. And just a brief question for Joe. I wonder if you're thinking of making a film, The Big Boys Getting Crude.
Trying to bring I, from the very beginning, told journalists, hang on, there's a great story out there. Not about me, forget about me, the underlying story. Why don't you do that story? The Swedish press didn't do it. They wrote a lot of good things for me, but they didn't tell the banana worker story. You can see my Canadian co-producer trying to get a lot of journalists in this country to dig in and to write about that story.
He was trying in the States?
Yeah. And nobody wanted to pick the story up. A lot of journalists can feel the heat, and it's not so fun. I can just tell you that there is a lawyer representing banana workers now, and he's appealing the case. And because Dole used like over 30 John Doe witnesses to kill off the case, and that's coming up now, and that's really something very explosive for journalists to take on, if there is anybody who has time.
Let me say this: this was the whole experience was a very strange one for me in that I've not only been defending the media all of my career, I've been a First Amendment defender my whole career, but I've been teaching media law to young journalism students at USC for almost 20 years. So I represent the media, I teach the media, and this experience made me think how terrible they were. They were the laziest people I'd ever seen in my life. And I tried, old students, I tried to feed people and say, there is a big, big story here. Maybe these John Doe witnesses are lying. Maybe there's a fraud on top of the fraud. I literally said the words to about 10 different reporters. There's a Pulitzer Prize in here if you want to dig. Nobody did. And it's, I think, endemic of American media. We see it during elections. Romney says, you know, healthcare's crap, and Obama says it's great. Nobody goes, well, is it? Let's look at it. Let's absorb this bill and talk about it. Nobody ever does that, and nobody did it here, and he's right. In the U.S., it was big, great company besmirched by these awful plaintiffs' lawyers, and in Sweden, it was tiny little filmmaker attacked by big company. So it was the battle, the storyline of the battle, but nobody wanted to go, what happened in Nicaragua to these workers? Nobody wanted to dig into the story, and that was one of the most disappointing things for me.
One for you.
You know, I'm really glad Fredric made this movie because I went through a very horrifying experience, but I did not have the foresight to like film every. It was just so horrifying. I didn't really film it as it was happening. And plus, we lost, and you know, it doesn't have the happy ending. But in all seriousness, I mean, I am deeply. I haven't figured out what the artistic expression of it is yet, but I am deeply concerned about the erosion of democratic.
Does that scare you now for your next films that you lost? That you have to watch yourself, what you write, what you keep, where you save stuff?
It will never stop me from taking on subjects I want to take on. I will just go about it in a smarter way. But I am deeply concerned about the direction of democracy in this country. I think we have confused capitalism with democracy. I think, you know, there are many great corporations out there that do many great things, and this is not a blanket statement about corporate America. But our democracy has become corporatized. There is a revolving door between senior corporate positions and the head of federal agencies. So the FDA, the EPA, all of these agencies protect corporations and not individuals. And that is something that is really problematic. I mean, how I'm going to make a film about that, I don't know, but it is an issue that should be of concern. The simultaneous demise of journalism, pure independent investigatory journalism, with the rising power of corporations, where the Supreme Court upholds the rights of corporations to infect elections as individual citizens. I mean, you know, we are in a very problematic place in this country with what this country is supposed to be about in terms of protecting the rights of individuals. And that's my little speech.
Many speeches tonight. Thank you very much for coming. And if you like the film, and because it's still running here for a week, so please tell your friends, Facebook, tweet, make phone calls, call your neighbor. I mean, there is many things to do. I mean, we will be happy if we have people who come and watch this film. And if you want to see the film that caused all this trouble and all the gray hair, you can buy it for $20. And thank you very much, Joe, for supporting me. It means a lot. It means a lot.